Hello?
Hello.
Hello.
All right, so let's give this a try, I suppose. So I see we've got just a moment. Yeah, is for connection purposes, if everybody could keep their cameras off just for the sake of disruptions, and hopefully that will go okay. Just to mention a thing about disruptions right away, because of the Zoom limit of 40 minutes, then depending on how long the session goes, there's very likely the situation, and I posted this on Facebook, that after 40 minutes, the session will automatically end. And that's why I posted 3 different sessions, so we can just sign back in, and then it should kickstart after just a few minutes. So that's the idea. So essentially, you know, the purpose of this is to give all of you a chance to ask some questions related to material in either academic writing or business English. And so I think it would make sense if we started with one course first and dealt with questions in that class and then move on to another class. So for me, I think more of you, or at least it seems like this to me, have questions about academic writing, and generally this is seen as the more challenging course of the two, or at least where more complex questions come up. So I think we should begin there. I mean, really, and like I said, this is more, it's a question and answer session. So what I hope is that you'll ask questions, I'll try to provide some more detailed information. So really, anybody can start that conversation. So if anyone has a particular question ready, then I hope that I can answer it, or at least try to answer it. And I've got materials here from both classes next to me. So if you want to point to a specific exercise or a specific page for further elaboration, then that's what we'll do. So, yeah. Does anyone want to speak up first? Does anyone have a question? Anybody? Wait a second. So if anyone's muted, this would be the time to unmute themselves and ask questions. That's the way this is seen. Think of this as like a consultation, but hopefully that's useful for everybody. And so I see Alexandra, Dragan, Alexander Prunic, Dragan, Alexandra Micic, Matea, Milan, Katarina, and Sara. Anybody? Nobody has any questions? That's you can also type them in. I mean, in essence, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good. So the reason that I scheduled this session is not to present new material. You already have material for this week, and there has been material issued repeatedly. And so this is, in a way, upon your request. So I'd received this from Generation 2018, which said the purpose of this email is to highlight some problems and propose suggestions in order to better deal with the current situation. and in particular, that it had become overwhelming, that the instructions are not quite concrete enough. Most of us replay the videos over and over again and are still not sure what is expected from us. Moreover, concerning homework assignments, offering some solutions or potential problems individually would benefit our learning process. So, well, I think it's difficult to offer comments individually because of the nature of the work. This would be the opportunity to address some of those issues. So I'm really just waiting on your questions. That's the whole point of this, is to try to give you some feedback where it's needed.
Okay, can I ask one question?
Yes, please do.
So I wanted to ask, so are we allowed to send you the basic outline for a review or research when we finish it?
So this is a good question. I highly encourage you to do that. When I say basic outline, then what I generally consider is, I mean, I think that it would be beneficial for students to seek feedback on their basic thesis and their basic topics before continuing. If we were having a normal semester, then many students often around this time of the semester, when we're reaching, the latter part, and who are thinking to take the exam in June or July, or even in September, come to consultations, and sometimes they'll have a whole paper prepared and we'll go over it. That's unfortunately impossible in our current situation. I've heard, after talking with Professor Zivkovic, that there's a plan for consultations to happen in a window sometime in the second half of May. And restrictions are being eased right now, so I do hope that will be the case. And then hopefully we'll still have that opportunity. But in the meantime, what I generally tell students in normal semesters is, if you have short questions, like, is this thesis okay? Or this is my idea, this is my thesis, and here are my main topics. Is this a suitable subject, and is this a suitable approach? That's what I can answer. It's even with all the downtime, and even with all of us maybe not working, not having classes, it's still pretty much impossible for me to write students individually with individual feedback, simply because the writing takes forever. But what I can do is offer, short or brief commentary on the direction. So in that sense, absolutely. Now, I've made this a long answer, but yes, if you have a plan for a review or a research paper or both, and before you go further into the development process or the writing process, I think it's the best time to send a plan to me and get commentary. That way, if you have some misdirections in your path, you eliminate them or rectify them now, rather than going in deep into the effort only to realize then that you're off track. And this does happen, unfortunately. Sometimes some of the best students will bring a semi-complete paper to me in the middle of May, only to get the feedback that most of it is off in its trajectory. So for all students listening, and to you, Sada, absolutely send me brief plans if you have any questions about them, and I'd be happy to send you feedback about the direction of your paper and whether it's on the right track or not.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yep. So Sada's broke the ice. She's broken the ice. Does anybody else want to keep the ball rolling here, to use multiple metaphors in a single sentence? And like I said, this is a session to offer comments on both academic writing and business English. So, I mean, I said I think it would be ideal for us to start with academic writing. But if no one's offering questions for academic writing, then we can also go into business English. That's completely okay.
Will we be getting the results of our homeworks?
So this is a good question as well. Generally, the homeworks are to motivate you to try to do these things. So I'm not grading the homeworks. If we were doing this in class, we'd have a 2.5-hour period, and often, with 15 or 20 or 25 students in the class, there's no way for me to offer individual feedback to every effort. But we would talk about some of the approaches to these tasks. So as far as the tasks go, if they've been submitted, if you've made an effort, you get full credit. And it's unfortunately very difficult, as I mentioned before, for me to offer individual feedback about each assignment with so many students and with so many assignments being submitted. So basically, if you turned it in and I say you get 2 points for that, or 1 point, you get full credit for having done it. The important thing is that you try. And that's why we have such a long class period. If we were actually in class of 2.5 hours, is so you can practice. And for shorter elements, earlier in the semester when we were working on like a thesis or a basic outline, then there really is an opportunity in that 2.5 hours for us to hear everybody's thesis or everybody's basic outline. Once we get into these more elaborate or more detailed analyses, then we kind of do it collectively. And so it's hard for me to offer individual feedback. But if you've turned it in, then you've basically earned that credit, which is nice because basically you're off to 100% grade so far. So everybody who's turned in an assignment has got full credit for any of the points that counted, and anyone who has not turned in an assignment has 0 points on those fronts. So at this point, there have been, I think, 4 points totally awarded for activities. And if you've done all of them, you've got 4 points. So out of your research paper, you're already starting with a 4 out of 14. And unfortunately, if you're a student who hasn't done any of those, then the best grade you can get on your research paper right now is a 10, So that's the advantage and disadvantage of these exercises. But they're really there to practice. And that's what we do in class. It doesn't mean we have to do them absolutely correctly every time. The important thing is that you're critically thinking and that you're approaching the tasks with a critical mind and with appropriate instruction. And that's the idea behind them. I hope that answers your question.
Yes.
Other questions?
I have a question about business English.
Okay, go ahead.
How would the colloquium look like and when should we expect it to be, even though the coronavirus and the thing as well?
Can you say that again? Just because there were some sounds that interrupted.
Okay, all right. When the colloquium would be in
Good.
business
This
English.
is something that I was planning to announce on Monday, but I can announce it now for those who are here.
Okay.
So this is the colloquium. I've already talked about it with Professor Zhivkovich just a couple days ago. So my idea is, according to the original plan, we were going to have 2 colloquiums. And we are not going to have 2 colloquiums. We're going to have 1 colloquium. So that 1 colloquium will be worth what the 2 colloquiums would be worth in a normal semester. So the 1 colloquium will be worth 20 points. So the colloquium for business English will be held 2 weeks from this coming Monday. And this is the format of the colloquium. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take elements of the 2 colloquiums. I'm not going to put everything that would have been on those 2 colloquiums. I'm going to decide on, you know, the more important, I mean, they're all important, but I'm going to reduce the length a bit so it's not 2 colloquiums at once, right? But it will cover everything that we've discussed from the beginning of the semester until the end. So why we're doing it 2 weeks from this Monday, or in 16 days, basically, is really we only have 1.5, 2 weeks more of material. So on Monday, we'll have new material for business English, and that'll be our last task journal assignment, is this coming Monday. And then the next Monday will be probably a bit more coverage of that same topic, and then we're done. I mean, normally we finish at the end of May, and the last week of class is the second colloquium. This, because we didn't have an April exam period, and we will have had the 12 to 13 hours or sessions of class, then we're essentially done because we didn't have any breaks in 2 weeks' time. So if Monday, upcoming, today's the 2nd, so Monday the 4th, there'll be new material. Then the 11th will be the last week of material, and then the 18th will be the colloquium. And the format will be like this. So on the 18th, I mean, I'll write an obawieszczenie, or an announcement on the Facebook group and on eLearn that the colloquium will be held at this time. So the plan behind the colloquium is this. I'm going to basically put the colloquium online. Let's say, I mean, our normal class would be happening. So that's the idea, is when we would normally be having class, approximately, let's say 10, 10:30, 9, whatever time I choose, or is free convenient. I am going to put the colloquium online at that point in a Word document. You will have, let's say, 2 to 3 hours to complete that colloquium. So everyone will be taking the colloquium at the same time. Everyone will have access to it at the same time, and there will be a deadline for when it has to be turned in. And that deadline will be somewhere between 2 and 3 hours to complete the colloquium. You can use your books. You can use your notes. I think that's fair. In my personal education in America, sometimes we would have what is called an open book test, where students were allowed to use the notes and the material they provided. So that's basically what's going to go on here, which, the way I see it, I think it's a fair way to do the colloquium. I think that the way the semester has progressed has put everybody at a slight disadvantage, because we don't get to talk about the material in as detailed a manner as I would like. And we don't get to have this question and answer session on a regular basis. But then you don't get to use your notes on the colloquium either. So hopefully, by giving you, 2 to 3 hours to complete that colloquium, and then submitting it to me by the deadline time, and giving you, that extended time plus your ability to use notes or materials to answer the questions, I think it hopefully will come out about equal in the end. But that's my idea. So when I spoke with Professor Zivkovic about that, he agreed. And so that's basically my idea for your colloquium in Business English 1. It'll be a bit longer than the typical colloquium, but it won't be as long as 2 colloquiums jammed together. You'll have between 2 and 3 hours to turn it in. So if I issue it at 10, and I'll announce that a week before, I'll say the colloquium is starting at 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock on May 18th, I post the colloquium. You have 3 hours to complete it, let's say, and then everyone sends it to my email who wants credit by 1 a.m. If you're working during that time, then like I'll post the time on May 11th so that everyone knows what time to expect the colloquium, because they should be ready then. Let's say if it's at 10 a.m. to go, you know, if the Word document, get the Word document, answer the questions, and turn it back in by 1. If you know that you won't be available at that time, then in between May 11th and May 18th, you should contact me and we'll establish a time when you can do the colloquium. So that's basically it. Milan, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Okay, good. So that, I mean, that's basically my approach. I have 3 courses this semester that have colloquiums, and all of them usually have 2 colloquiums, like say 2, Business English 1, Business English 3, and that's going to be my procedure for all the classes. So I hope that it's fair.
Yeah.
So I see a few other students have joined us in the meantime. Maybe you have questions. So like I said, academic writing, business English. Well, I did want to actually, this reminds me of one thing that has been on my mind. Normally, the deadline for presentations and task journals in their entirety, I know that you've been posting your, weekly efforts on the comment fields or submitting them to me, which is great. That means you're done with those tasks. But you still do want to turn in your presentation plus all of the task journals, all the task journal assignments by the end of the semester. So the odd thing this semester is, when is the end of the semester? That's very unclear. So once I know that deadline, then we'll be able to proceed, or I'll be able to post it. What I'm hoping is that we can still use the original date, and that would be, actually I can check it up. If we go to the Kalenderrada on the faculty website, then the semester originally was intended to end. Now it's just loading up, just a moment. Here we go. Let's see, June 6th. So June 6th would be the end of the semester, and then the June-July exam period would begin on the 8th. We still don't know how this calendar is going to work out now. But as soon as I get more information, then I will post a date when everything should be submitted. That date will have to be, at least a week or 2 in advance of the potential exam, so that I have time to grade your task journals, put together pre-exam points, and post the results. So that's just something that's been on my mind. It's still undetermined, but you will have, if our last essential session of class is May 18th, which is the colloquium, then you'll have at least, let's say 2 weeks after that to complete all your assignments. So that's kind of the tentative date, would be, I'm not sure, but very likely June 1st will be when everything is due. So that's task journals and task journal assignments. And then, of course, for academic writing papers, they are simply due whenever you decide to take the exam. So Zoom has given us an extension on our meeting, so that's good. We don't have to jump from this meeting to another one. At least I hope so. Are there other questions regarding academic writing or business English that we can answer?
No.
No. Nobody has any questions?
Can you repeat all the tasks for task journals? what we have to do, CV, cover letter.
Right. I will try to do that. I don't have that in front of me at the moment, and I often change things slightly semester by semester, but I'll give it a try. So basically, we have our main presentation, and that's the dominant. And that's another thing also, before I go any further, because our semester got cut short before presentations could ever happen, which is unfortunate because it's one of my favorite parts of the course. Your presentations, that presentation part of the testernal grade will simply be graded as part of the written portion. So that's one thing first. Now, so that's going to be by far worth the most. But each individual task will be graded individually. And so in addition to the presentation, we had CV or resume, cover letter for the sales coordinator position written to your particular company. We had an inquiry from your company to another company. We had a sales flyer. We had a product description. We had packaging.
And that's it.
And we did not have an assignment this week. I'm sorry for that. But we'll have one this week. So that assignment will be posted in 2 days' time with new instructions and new material, and will be due by May 11th for the sake of discussion boards. And that's it. That'll be the last assignment. Does that answer your question, Matea?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions? I know you're all anxious to get out and enjoy the sunny weather, so. Does anybody have any questions regarding academic writing, research papers, any of the tasks submitted? I mean, I originally scheduled the session because, I mean, the thing that was most concerning to me in the email that I received was that the instructions were not clear enough. And so if anybody has questions about the nature of the tasks or elements of those tasks, this would be the time to discuss those elements. And we can, I have pretty much all the papers here in one place or another, and we could go into any details that are in question. Does anybody have any questions about this particular week's assignments when it comes to academic writing? I mean, this week it's pretty clear, I think.
Yes.
Were there any weeks that you found particularly problematic and want some insight into? Anybody? So we'll see if there's another question. If there aren't any more questions, then there's not a reason to continue the session. But I did want to offer at least one comment about academic writing and a primary concern in former years. I think that when it comes to research papers, which has been the focus of pretty much all of the recent week's activities, the one thing that we haven't had a chance to practice, well, we've had a chance to practice, but the one thing that gives students, I think, the most trouble traditionally is sourcing and sourcing appropriately and avoiding plagiarism. So I did want to reiterate that there will be, in the next week or two, more opportunities and more tasks related to appropriately sourcing your research papers. And the key thing that I wanted to mention, and I said this in the video as well, is that any information that you get from sources, regardless of the nature of the source, documentary film, YouTube video, magazine, book, internet, any of that, it has to be sourced at the end of your book, at the end of your paper, and in your paper. And so there will be directions, and I will be posting some additional useful websites that give additional examples of how to do that. The one thing that is a bit lacking in this particular book is some direction on how to do the citations or the sourcing in the paper itself. I think the instructions are quite clear for what a source looks like at the end of your paper in the bibliography or the works cited page. But I think it's less clear on how to source particular documents, especially online sources, how to source them correctly in your paper. Remember, when you source them in your paper, it's generally a very short citation. It's just there so that, you know, we know where that information came from, and then we can look back to the works cited page to track it down if needs be. So it's often just a name and a page number, or a name or a website name, but that depends on the source. So we'll be getting a little bit more into that to make sure we can do that correctly. And that's going to be the work with paraphrasing and summarizing, and how to turn information that you find in your sources into components of your paper is really going to be the focus for the rest of the semester, and just getting more and more practice with that so that we're more comfortable as we go into writing our research papers. So that's my additional commentary on that. And there'll be more coming on Monday, or actually Tuesday. So it's not overwhelming. The plan is business English material will be posted on Monday, and academic writing material will be posted on Tuesday, so that it's not too much at once. Yeah, does anybody have any additional questions right now?
Just a moment. I just need to find it in the book.
Sure, okay, we'll wait on you. And is it in the primary book?
Yes, in the
Okay.
steps to writing well.
And if anyone has other questions while Dragan is locating his question, you can also ask, it's fine. And Dragan, do you know the nature of your question? Because perhaps I know where in the book it is if you're having trouble finding it.
I kind of forgot what. No, I can't find it now.
Do you know what, I mean, what was the nature of the question or the concern? And then perhaps I know where it is.
Well, the quoting of the articles and such. Like, I think there were two of the same categories, but are like signed differently or such.
Is it the difference between like MLA and APA style, or is it just how to quote correctly?
No, but like signed article in a like journal or such.
Yeah.
Like there were a few of them.
Right. I mean, it does essentially, like on page 155, it says signed article in newspaper, for example. And then they have signed article in a journal. And these are all on page 155. So we have signed article in a monthly magazine, signed article in a journal, and signed article in a newspaper.
And then there is the 159.
Okay. So we go to page 159.
And there,
right, and that's articles and online periodicals.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
so I will say this: they are different, and one of the essential differences is that if you'll notice that on page 155, all of these articles have a page number, right? Like here it says signed article in a journal, page 33, pages 309 to 323, and then signed article in a newspaper, B9 plus. So all of these have page numbers. So essentially, when it's an online article, and like I said in the commentary last week, we are very likely going to use online sources because of where we live and access to English information. We are very likely to use online sources almost exclusively for our research papers. That's just, where we're at.
So we used from 159, right?
That's pretty much what I would point you in the direction of. And I think for most sources, unless they're kind of outlier sources, then the information is here. So all of these, when we see this information on page 159 and then rolling over onto page 160, whether it's a review or an editorial or an article in a newspaper, that's basically what it should look like in the back of your research paper at the end.
It's like we need to link the site or
exactly. So you just copy and paste the site into, like that's the replacement for the page number, right? Because in essence, what the works cited page has functions as in the academic world is that, for things to be published in the academic world or in, let's say reputable journals of nonprofit or even profitable varieties, they are called peer-reviewed. And what that means is before they're ever published or receive any kind of attention, their sources can be checked. So the important thing is that using the information in the works cited page or the bibliography, the people who would be reviewing that, which in this instance is me grading your paper, can track down your source if I need to, so that I can check on the legitimacy or truthfulness of your source and make sure that there's no plagiarism issues. So if that was a journal, then you would have page numbers there, so I can find, whether it's a journal or a newspaper, I can track it down, I can go to those page numbers, and I can access the information. when these days, a lot of newspapers have gone exclusively online, and a lot of journals and periodicals are published online as well as in print form. So in the absence of page numbers, they can still sometimes exist if they're, you know, digitally posted in a similar format to the print format. So sometimes you still will have page numbers, but a lot of times you won't. And in the absence of that, you get a website. If you notice, one other thing to mention on these articles is that whenever you have an author, that author always goes first. And so I think what's less clear in these particular citations on page 159 is how does that look in your paper? So like here, we know based on what's posted, you know, right here, that's how it looks in the bibliography, but that doesn't tell us exactly how to put it in the paper. So the general advice would be that if you have a signed article in a magazine, and on page 159, it says Goodman, David, forced labor, then when you use that information in your paper, and then you finish using it, then you'd have parentheses, and inside it would be Goodman. And then there's no page number, so it's just Goodman. If you don't have a signed article, and you have an unsigned article, then what appears in parentheses following the used material, whether quote, summary, or paraphrase, would be school violence. And if you don't have that, if the article is unnamed and it's simply a web page, and this can also happen, then you use the link or the website. So it's not exactly clear here in this book how you proceed with in-text citations, but that's why in the next week, I'm going to be posting some additional useful resources, essentially nonprofit sites that give additional information on how to use accurately ML citations in and at the end of your papers, which should offer additional information and instruction on how to do that. This book that we use, Steps to Writing Well, is quite up to date, but there are, I'd say, sources that exist now that didn't exist here. And for example, when this book was published, YouTube was, I believe, not a thing. And let's say you get information from a documentary film or a TED Talk or, you know, some kind of presentation like that that you find on YouTube or another site, and it's suitable, and you judge that that person or the organization who's hosting that presentation is credible enough to be used as a source, you're not going to find instructions for that in here, because this book was published before some sources that we now have were available. And that's where some of these sites that I'll be posting and talking about in the next week or two will be useful and hopefully answer some of these questions.
Yes.
So. So I see a question in the chat has been posted. What should we pay attention to for the colloquium terms, translation, and English Serbian? So the colloquiums for Business English 1 traditionally are dominated by material that we talked about or was posted in this semester from my element of the class, which would be, you know, the task journal assignments and all the material that we either went over prior to the, you know, breaking of our semester and the material that I've posted since. So what can we expect to be on the colloquium? There will be a short section of translation terms. Generally, these colloquiums are about 10 tasks or so, or somewhere between 8 and 10, let's say. Because we're only having one colloquium, it'll probably be slightly longer. Traditionally, when we have 2 colloquiums, each colloquium is about 8 or 9 or 10 tasks, and you have an hour and a half to complete it in class. This semester, the colloquium, as I mentioned earlier, will be slightly longer. It'll probably be 10 to 12 tasks, but you'll have 2 to 3 hours to complete that colloquium, and you'll have access to notes and materials that have been posted. So as far as what to pay attention to, any terms that are going to be on it as far as translation, those are coming from Professor Živković. So if there is terminology that you've gone over with him in the main lecture, you want to be familiar with it. I have nothing to do with that portion of the exam, or the colloquium rather. He simply gives me 5, 10, somewhere, usually 5 to 10 terms for each colloquium. So, you know, we'll combine those, it'll probably be 10 terms altogether, maybe 15. And he will choose those. And that's the only part of the colloquium that comes from the main lecture. So there'll be 10 or 15 terms where you will have to either translate them from English to Serbian, or where you will, you know, describe the meaning in English and translate them into Serbian, or vice versa. They'll be in Serbian and you have to translate them to English. The other parts of the colloquium will all come from elements that we've discussed during the course of the semester. So basically every task journal assignment that we mentioned just a bit ago. And remember that in the first week, we also talked about division of the economy and the main sectors that are active and what kind of activities are parts of those sectors. So that was kind of the first theme. So when we think of themes during the semester, we just go piece by piece, and it's going to be, and there's actually, we'll have 7 task journal assignments by the time we complete the semester, but there's really 9 themes, or at least 8 themes. So because 2 themes you had no homework for at this point. The first week, we just discussed the sectors of the economy, and that's one theme for which we did not have homework. And then, and the interviews, that's right. Yep. So that's the other theme that we went over, where there was no written task journal assignments associated with it, but you still want to know approaches and information about those themes. So it's the 7 task journal assignments, the last theme of which you haven't seen yet, but which will be presented in 2 days. And the additional, you know, structure of the economy. Remember, we also talked about industrialization and pre-industrialization in those aspects. So basically anything that was presented could be on the colloquium. That's generally, I get this question every semester if we were having in class, and they would say, what should I expect on the colloquium? And I'll tell you, everything that we've discussed could be on there, or anything could be discussed from elements that we talked about or presented in class.
So we will need to come up with examples or such, right?
Well, without giving too much away, there will be some vocabulary, and it's not just like English Serbian. So sometimes I'll be asking for you to explain terms. Sometimes it'll be you providing an example of something, and sometimes it'll be asking you to use certain terms or certain concepts in a paragraph or in a short piece of writing. So none of the tasks will be terribly long in nature. So if they're 10 or 12, then if they're 10 or 12 tasks, then each one, if they're, you know, about 10 minutes long, then you should be able to cover that in about a 2-hour period. That's kind of the idea. So some will be longer than others, and some tasks will be worth more than others. Essentially, like the more words or the more terms or the more examples or concepts that are required, then the greater value that task will have in the overall grade.
Well, yes, I think I get it now.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm going to be adapting the colloquium. Every year, the subject matter may change a little bit as far as what I present, so that it's not, so that there's some variety for me, if nothing else. So I'm going to take a look at both colloquiums, which I have already created. And like I said, pull what I consider the most important pieces. And in the process, I may change things slightly or modify certain tasks, but that's essentially what you can expect. One task will deal with translation, and the other, let's say 10 tasks will come from the material that we've discussed. I would generally say that it'll be about one task per theme. So 9 or 10 themes that we've discussed, plus the translation terms, and that's going to be the colloquium. The main presentation. Well,
Yes, I kind of forgot that.
Well, if you forgot, all the criteria should still be posted in the Facebook group. And I believe that the main criteria, I can check on this right now, are also posted in on the eLearn page. I know some students have trouble with eLearn. So
Yes, I don't.
And which is why I am not using eLearn for this particular session, and why we haven't been using eLearn this semester and last semester, despite my preference for that over things like Facebook, because it simply has not provided a suitable vehicle for material. So if I go to the page though in eLearn, I'm just going to make sure that these are here and see, let's say, older topics. These have been posted for a while now. There is business, yeah. If you go to the eLearn site, then one of the documents that's posted there says Business English 1 presentation notes and guidelines, and those are basically the instructions for the presentation. There's also the Business English 1 course outline, and there's also the task journal description. So all of those are there. Additionally, on the eLearn platform are more or less descriptions of, by order, sales coordinator position posting for CV and cover letter, enquiry, job interview questions, let's see, sales flyers, product descriptions, product package task, and then actually your next assignment is already posted there in advance. So if you don't have access to that Dragan, then just send me an email and I can send you those documents. It's not a problem.
Yes, I will. Okay.
Yep. And then if you have, like I said, brief questions or that I can answer an email about those elements, then, I should be able to provide some further clarification.
Will we be getting like a good example of well done homework for that? Or
what I would, in the past, I have never posted that before. But if that would be helpful, then I could probably, let me make a note of this actually. In the past, because we had a normal semester, then the great thing is that as the semester progresses, we usually see numerous examples of very good presentations and some poor ones, unfortunately. But since we haven't been able to sit in class and see our colleagues present, then yeah, we actually don't have a visual and textual idea of what a good presentation looks like. So I can do that. I'll make a note of this to myself. And while there's never been, I believe, a perfect example of a presentation, I'm sure that I can find a presentation that is a good example in digital form that I can post just so you all have an idea of what I expect with, another month left to work on that. So yeah, I'll do that.
yes, thanks.
Yep. So other questions, whether people want to announce them, or as you see, we've got our Zoom group chat open. You're welcome to post them there. Is it not possible to have online presentations? Huh. Well, in a way, I'm gonna have to ask some of you whether it's possible to have online presentations. Nina, you've asked this question. So I'm not sure. Obviously, it's taken me a while to have any kind of video session because I am not the most technically inclined or media savvy person in the world. So it probably is possible for students to present their presentations using whatever format each student has used, whether that's a Word document or a PowerPoint presentation. But I don't know how to do that. So, I mean, what we could do is we could use a format like this, and then for the presenter, make, that individual the host for that, however long the session lasts. I mean, in the past, one thing I've done, whether it was Business English 1 or Business English 2, where we also have a, not to be a spoiler, you'll also have a large presentation waiting for you. In Business English 2 is, if there is not enough time during the course of a semester for each student to present, and that has happened more than once, then I've held a special session where we just have, presentation after presentation after presentation for those of you who have not had a chance to present. In a way, what I would say on this issue is it more complicated for you to have that kind of, media opportunity? Do you want to have that opportunity, or would you prefer to hand it in, along with your task journals in written form? It's, in the past, what I would say is every semester there are students who, because they are, students in overlapping generations, or because they are like working students, then, and they don't have a chance to come to class and they never have a chance to present, then they just simply hand it in, and that presentation grade is just moved towards the written evaluation part. So, like, I'm not going to force you to present. For me, I mean, yeah, I have mixed feelings. I feel like it's going to be more complicated to try to have a session like that. And it might put additional burdens on you as students, and maybe additional anxiety on you as students. Not that we should run from anxiety, it's part of presenting. But mixed feelings in the sense that I think the simpler path is for you to turn it in to me and I grade it. The unfortunate aspect is that none of us see each other's presentations, which is one of the reasons why we do it, is to get experience presenting in front of others and to give feedback to our colleagues and to experience and to learn about various companies, their ways of operating, and how to present those activities. So in a way, I mean, if we were in class right now, which we're kind of having, I would put it to a vote. And maybe that's the best way to do it. So, I mean, here's an idea is if you want to have a vote as a generation, if you want to have an organized vote, and we can just do a democratic procedure, though if there are people who, if more than half of the students would prefer to have a session of presentations, then we could probably arrange that. And if more students would prefer the handing it in option, then we could go with that. But we'd have to have that vote soon. Someone would have to organize that vote and then send me the results, because it would be really up to you, the student body, to make that choice. I'm okay with either choice. And then if the vote was positive for presentations, then we would have to schedule a time, and that would have to be a really large block of time, or at least 2 blocks of time, to allow those who want to present. I see in the meantime, Dragan has mentioned, can those who just want to hand it in do so regardless of the voting? Yes, that's fine. That's another option. I mean, this is a situation we've never faced before. So maybe that's another option, is for all of those who want to present and be evaluated that way, we can just make a list, and based on how long that list is, we can schedule a time for all of those who want to present can present, and that doesn't impose that, you know, restriction or obligation on other students. So here I'm going to type, so I'm typing a message, just a moment. How many of you actually want to present?
Not me.
Okay. I figured based on the question that was Dragan's take on things, right? I mean, I know that as a student and as a, I believe, as we discussed last semester, as by nature an introvert, then given the choice when I was in school, my answer would be I do not want to present. But I think that the wise, you know, conscientious devil on my shoulder would say it would be good for you to present. Like, I think it's good for you to present, and I think it's good for other students to hear you present, but I'm not going to force it upon you given the difficult nature of the way the semester is unfolded. So Nina, I respect that.
I feel
Go
like
ahead.
because we are sending everything in from all the classes and we're doing homeworks,
Yeah.
just an opportunity to present something.
Yeah, I mean, I that's why I say I agree. It is, I think, an advantageous thing for those watching someone present and for the person presenting to have that experience. Normally, in a normal semester, we'd have 9 weeks of doing that. You know, for starting in the 5th week and through the 13th week, we'd have 1 or 2 students presenting every time, and then that would take up half the class, and the other 40, 50 minutes would be material, you know, for the next week. Mate has already submitted her presentation. That doesn't mean that you can't present it. So I mean, I like Nina, if you want to present, and I'm more than willing to create an avenue on Zoom, very likely. If can we use Zoom with PowerPoint? Does anybody know this?
Well, there's a share screen option.
Uh-huh.
So
you could like, share screen option, and then you would have your PowerPoint presentation open, and then you would present it in such a way.
yes.
Good. You know more than I in this regard, so that's good. So, but what I don't, I mean, for me, I will also say this: it is less time consuming and easier for me to grade a presentation live than it is in written form. So for me, it's easier if everyone presents. But I'm not going to make that the priority of this situation. You know, I want it to be put in your hands, given that, you know, while we've all faced challenges and difficulties, I feel like, unfortunately, we've lost an opportunity for discussion that we would normally have this semester. And the presentation would be maybe the one way, besides, you know, for example, the discussion today, for us to have this kind of dialogue and interaction. So that said, if Nina, if you're the only one who wants to present, I don't want, you know, we can do that. But I would hope that you're not the only one who wants to present. That would put you in a potentially awkward situation. So let's see, who else is here? We got Matea, Milan, Dragan's already spoken, Ivana, Alexandra, Sara, Katarina, Alexandra, Michi, Stefan. Anyone else who wants to present? Silence.
It's decided then.
So nobody wants to present except Nina. Nina, do you still want to present?
Yes.
Bravo. So what I'll actually do is I will create another session in the coming weeks. Let's say it'll probably be, maybe we'll do it, for example, May 25th or something like that. So that students who do want to, and if you change your mind and you want to present your presentation by that point, then we will schedule another Zoom session, and it will not be called Nina's session, although it may end up being that. It'll be called, you know, voluntary presentations. So I will create another session on Zoom so that those who do want to present will have an opportunity to do so. So if it's just Nina, then it'll just be Nina, and she will do a share screen option. But if others step forward, others who are not here right now and thus not, you know, having the opportunity to offer their voice at this exact moment, or those who are here and decide that actually they'd rather, you know, do their presentation and have that experience and potentially benefit from it, likely benefit from it, will also have that chance. So we will make another session for presentations. And Nina, if nobody else but you presents, then at least we have one example, and hopefully you will have gained from that experience.
Thank you very
Yep.
much.
You're welcome. Thank you for stepping forward, and I hope others, like I will say, I hope others change their mind and do want to present, but I'm not going to press that obligation upon you. So that's my job. So my job, in essence, is to create, one, I will post another presentation. I will post an example of a presentation from past years that is a good example of a presentation. Like I said, there's, I believe, never been a perfect example that I can remember. I think someone has got 99 out of 100 before, but no one's got 100. And maybe Nina will become the first. Maybe one of you will become the first in written form. So, yeah, so I'll post a presentation, and then I'll, you know, in the coming weeks, decide on a time for presentations of anybody who is willing or wanting to present to happen. So, are there other questions that we can address regarding concerns in academic writing or business English? Either typed or spoken. Well, if there are not any further questions, then I suppose we'll bring this session to its end. I would just remind everybody that new material and very likely our last theme for business English will be posted on Monday, and there will be follow-up video commentary about that. And then Tuesday will be new material for academic writing. I think at this point in the semester, given that we've gone more or less the whole semester without video classes, it would seem an awkward change at this point to do so, or to try to schedule those, but, you know, especially with 2 days notice, but there's always the possibility that May 11th, we can have an internet class for either one of these classes. I think in a lot of ways, it's very difficult for us to have a video session of academic writing because so much of the practice time, so much of the time in a 2 hour 15 or 2 hours and a half period of class is you looking down at a paper or you looking at a screen and attempting to do a task. That's why we have 2.5 hours, because there's a lot of like individual practice time or group practice time. So I don't think it's a class that lends itself easily to this type of format. Nor is it's challenging for me to create that block of time in my lockdown circumstances. So, so what I believe is we will have the remaining 2 weeks. That's essentially the way I see the semester, is that there is, in the remaining 2 weeks, that will give us, that will be just as many weeks of material as we would have if we had had a normal semester with an April exam period and all those elements. That we will essentially finish on May 11th in Business English 1, May 18th for the colloquium. And that'll be more or less the end of our semester. So the remaining 2 weeks, I think we'll continue with this format that we've been operating with, but I would also say that if you are, you know, if you are interested as students in having another session similar to this one, then we can absolutely have another consultation session where you can offer questions on, you know, either material that you are worried about going into the colloquium or before the exam time or before writing time, or with concerns for material that has yet to be posted, to get some feedback on that. Then I'd be happy to create another opportunity in the middle of May, so any lingering questions can be answered. So if that's the case, then, you know, just as the last time when I got an email from more or less the group as a whole, which was titled, I'm going to my email, FLV, or FLVENG 2018. So if your group or you as a student body would like to have another session, then you can contact me. And now that I have figured out more or less how to do this, which was a challenge for someone in my advanced years, then we can make it happen without too much trouble again. So any last questions, last chance? If not, then we'll bring this to a close. Okay, well, it looks like there are no further questions immediately. Like I said, we could have another question and answer session if needs be. Look for further material coming for Business English on Monday and for academic writing material on Tuesday. Please send me tasks for academic writing by then and post them in the commentary section. That's also true for Business English. In the meantime, as things open up, stay safe. I'm glad we've had a chance to talk, at least in this format. I look forward to seeing.
Can we just send it in email?
Well, I prefer you sending it, if possible, to the Facebook commentary field, simply because we don't have a chance in class to discuss these items, and that is, in a way, that serves, that board or commentary board serves as at least a semblance or a substitution of conversation, right? That's why it's a commentary field. So I would prefer that you send it there, but you'll still earn points if you send it to my email. And Dragan, I see you mean the task journal. Yeah, essentially, the task journal assignments are still due at the end of the semester, and that's when I will go through a thorough grading of them. But I want them to be done by the date. Like if I've posted that these should be submitted by next Monday or next Tuesday, whatever date I've chosen, they should be submitted. And students not submitting those by that point have not fulfilled their obligations, can have deductions on the assignment. Is that, I hope that's, does that answer the question? Is that clear?
Well, yes.
Okay, good. So you can send me by email. When you finally hand them in at the end of the semester, that'll be the format. I'll be posting a presentation in the days ahead for Business English 1, so you can see what that looks like. And of course, new material. So again, another last chance for questions or comments. Okay, I suppose that's the end. So in the days ahead, good luck, stay safe as things open up. I imagine one way or another, we will have another session similar to this before the presentation session, but if not, then, you know, I wish that the semester could have gone otherwise at this point. And I hope that at least, and I mean, I have the feeling that we've covered as much material, as in depth as we would have if we were in class. I still think it's not ideal, but I think in the spontaneous nature of the semester, as an instructor, I feel like we've met, you know, my demands more or less, or will have met my demands by the end of the semester. But I am looking forward, and I sincerely hope that we will return to normalcy in the fall, where we will have additional chances to present and to interact and to discuss these elements. So in the meantime, stay safe, good luck, and continue to submit your assignments, and I look forward to receiving your efforts on a regular basis. All right. Take care, everybody. Now I just have to figure out how to end this.
Leave.
There we go. End meeting.